Welcome to PR Future, but today we're going to talk about PR Past. With this year's Super Bowl just around the corner, we wanted to take a look at a memorable campaign that dominated the headlines at last year's Super Bowl. M&M's launched a multi-platform campaign where it retired its famous candy spokespersons and replaced them with comedian Maya Rudolph. All throughout 2021, the candy spokespersons were targeted by right-wing commentators like Tucker Carlson. So public anticipation over their announcement that they would be abandoning their candy personalities was naturally very high. As we would all discover during the game, Maya Rudolph's collaboration was a humorous spoof, a play on both the brand's image and Maya's own fun personality. Needless to say, the famous M&M spokescandies would be returning. Jessica Adelman, a member of our USC Center for Public Relations Board of Advisors, joins me today from her office at Mars Wrigley Company in New Jersey to talk about all things M&M. Jessica is a Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the company, and she teaches public relations as an adjunct at Northwestern University. I'm your host, Fred Cook, and this is PR Future. All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I'm really anxious to talk to you about this today. But before we get to M&M's, Jessica, let's start off with a little bit about your background, because you have a stellar resume. Tell us about your PR career a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much, Fred, and thank you to USC Annenberg for having me today. It's really a pleasure. And I call myself a little bit of a happenstance communicator. I fell into the field, but I absolutely love the field of PR and communications. I went to college up in New Hampshire. I went to Dartmouth, where I became a Russian studies major. And this was at the end of the Cold War. And everybody was not as interested in the cloak and dagger anymore, but the opportunities to go to Russia and to work for Western businesses who were opening up their operations in Moscow, the opportunities were extraordinary. So I sent my resume to every U.S. company with a Moscow office, and I ended up working for Monsanto. And then I headed back to the U.S. in 1998 to go to business school. I did an MBA at Wharton and a master's in international relations at University of Pennsylvania at the same time. And then I spent time with the global agribusiness Cargill, and then Syngenta, a Swiss multinational that I ran their corporate affairs and communications in their North America region and collaborated globally with my colleagues. And then I had the great fortune to be the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Kroger, where I was Chief Sustainability Officer, Chief Communications Officer, and got to work on our Zero Hunger, Zero Waste social impact plan, which was absolutely one of my life's privileges. And now I'm at Mars, which I absolutely love.
And Jessica, that's impressive. You have an impressive background. And how did your past experiences lead you to M&M's, of all things?
So great question, Fred. And if you notice, the red thread through my somewhat eclectic background is really the food and agriculture space. I think it is so purposeful. How are we going to feed 8 billion, maybe 10 billion people and not destroy the planet at the same time? That is the thing that I am incredibly passionate about. And maybe it's informed by my time in Russia and seeing what difficult agronomic practices did to the environment. And yet still there weren't groceries on the shelves that made me appreciate the modern food supply chain. And I've gotten to work at every juncture of the food supply chain. But for me, M&M's and Mars was the chance to work with some of the world's most iconic and famous brands, and to be in that consumer-facing, iconic, legendary brand status with some CPG products. We have $11 billion brands at Mars, and the chance to work on those is absolutely fantastic.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, M&M's have been around longer than I have. They talk about iconic. Did you have any idea that they had this social significance when you joined Mars? Had you followed their history as a brand?
I think we all follow M&M's as a brand, whether we're aware of it or not, right? Because they're so integral in our common experience. And what I totally underappreciated was exactly how relevant they are and how much people care about them, and in particular the characters. I'm sure we will come on to the M&M's characters at some point in our near future on this podcast, but I actually run our call centers as well. And I asked the question when I came in of the team, our great team that staffs the call center, and I said, just for my benefit, what's the number one thing that causes our customers and consumers to get upset? And they said to me without hesitation, it's when one of our characters does something out of character. I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, if, yellow is sweet and nice and kind, our yellow M&M. And if he does something a little bit nasty or people perceive as out of character for him, people get very upset and they say yellow wouldn't do that. So these are amazing assets that we have, and think of them more in the Disney framework of a Mickey Mouse or a Minnie Mouse, or, these are real characters who mean a lot to our consumers. And we're really, that's a lot of responsibility, but we're so proud to have them.
And how did you get to know these different characters when you joined the company? How did you get to know the personalities of each color of M&M?
Well, so I think you, as a good communicator and a business partner, you come in and you want to try to spend as much time as you can with the business and to understand how does it operate and what are our big drivers of success. And that meant spending a lot of time with my CMO, who I have a wonderful partnership. She's amazing. And then with the brand teams. And one of the things that really helped me understand the personalities of the spokescandies was when we did a massive purpose refresh of the M&M's brand. And we actually touched every one of the characters a year ago in January, which really kicked off a lot of the social conversation that led up to our Super Bowl ad of 2023.
Were you surprised by the public's reaction to the changes that you made to the M&Ms?
I think it did really strike a chord with us on exactly how relevant they were. All of us were caught slightly off guard by the level of conversation. Now, of course, there were a few other actors who got involved and really stoked a lot of that conversation. But as you probably know, and any good communicator will tell you, that today's world, you need to be prepared to be in the crosshairs of a polarized discussion. And if you're not, then perhaps you haven't done your due diligence. And if you're going to do something big with your big brands, you are probably going to end up as the topic of conversation. And some people are going to love it, and some people are going to have some raised eyebrows. But either way, if you want to be relevant, you need to be in the conversation. And that's where we found ourselves.
And that's an interesting point, because as you know, we study polarization a lot at our center at USC. And we look at issues like immigration and gun control and the Capitol riots as very polarizing issues across America. But it was so remarkable to me that M&Ms became a polarizing issue. I thought that was stunning. But and do you have any thoughts about why M&Ms would attract so much attention in that regard?
I don't, other than I think the conversation took a turn that perhaps none of us expected when some of our different commentators on cable news networks started to weigh in. But speaking of your work and the work that USC does on polarization, I went back and I looked on your relevance report, Fred. In 2018, I wrote a piece about polarization and how, maybe a decade ago in our jobs, you could kind of tell that you were going to win the hearts and minds generally, but, you needed to be prepared to basically upset 50% of America, and you were going to be in the crosshairs. So that was 5 years ago. And, maybe I should have paid more attention to my own work in your relevance report, Fred. But, I think it was an interesting twist that the commentators came in and brought up a conversation about the W word, which I know is kind of loaded, and capitalism and woke capitalism, but we just decided to keep going and stick to the purpose of M&Ms, and that is around being known for humor and colorful fun. So if we couldn't poke a little fun at ourselves and have some humor in the campaigns, then we weren't being true to the brand purpose.
And when you do that, Jessica, do you see any impact on sales, positive or negative, from that kind of attention?
So we have seen an incredible amount of attention and a big spike in all of the metrics that we track. So if I go back and look at our recent Super Bowl campaign, now first and foremost, it's important to realize after doing a few of these big Super Bowl campaigns, which I will admit are a lot of fun, and I'd never gotten the chance to do them before. So it's one of the things I love about being at Mars. I asked the question, when is the majority of the coverage regarding the ad cycle for the game? And we found out that 90% of the coverage actually took place in the 2 weeks before the game. Mm-hmm. So that actually shaped and informed how we approached this year's ad by quite a bit. And we set the goal of 15 billion impressions. We blew through that by day 2. And we ended up at about 25 billion impressions. And what we have seen is we have seen double-digit sales growth on M&Ms by period as a result ever since we did the purpose refresh. So we're a privately held company, so I won't give you the math, but I will tell you it has been very accretive to the brand. And we saw a big uptick in traffic on our M&Ms.com website, where people can buy the M&Ms directly during the game.
That's fascinating. And it just shows that people are really paying attention.
Absolutely. And we tried to create an integrated campaign that was taking place on the big screen, on the small screen, that was very sort of multi-dimensional rather than just a 30-second television spot. It was a shared experience over 2 weeks where we could really help America be part of the humor and the fun around the characters and the brand that M&M's is known for.
Can you talk a little bit about how the rationale and give us an overview of why you use Maya Rudolph as a spokesperson in this instance?
Absolutely. Now, Maya herself, of course, as an actress, is known as a very funny person, and the different programs that she's associated with are always crowd pleasers. And she's also, when you look at her numbers, pretty much all Americans really adore Maya Rudolph. So that was something that we found as a family brand and a company that is really pervasive in society and appeals to all generations. We wanted to be kind of squarely with a spokesperson and a talent that America could sort of agree on, right? And she is was a wonderful talent, and we were very proud to have had the chance to work with her with M&M's.
But did you use her instead of the characters? Was it a switch in strategy, or were you worried about the reaction to the M&M personalities?
So what we did in the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl was that we announced our spokescandies were going on an indefinite pause. And in their stead, we introduced a new talent in the form of Maya Rudolph. Now, that set off a lot of excitement on multiple dimensions, where, even our own associates had questions. Wait a minute, what do you mean the spokescandies are on pause? What does that mean? But again, in the spirit of M&Ms and our M&Ms purpose of for all fun kind, we wanted to bring humor and comedy to the journey and keep people guessing. So we did quickly reassure fans and consumers that they could expect to see the spokescandies back at the end of the story arc when the Super Bowl ad aired. And we also saw America get in on the joke in the 2 weeks leading up to the game.
And how have they come back since the Super Bowl? What's been the strategy since then?
Well, we had a lot of fun during the 2 weeks beforehand where we actually created several different storylines for the characters themselves who, went off to pursue outside passions while they were on their pause as official spokescandies. And we set up all these digital first partnerships that were consistent with the various characteristics and characters of the specific characters. So Red, he is a bit of an egomaniac and he is our very first spokescandy. So he set up an eBay shop where he was hawking memorabilia on his own personality to try to capitalize on his fame. Yellow, I mentioned before, who's our sweetheart, he felt that he just was really born to be a spokescandy. So he went and tried to rep Snickers for a little bit. So we got a little cross-brand promotion. Green, who had set off a bit of a firestorm a year before with her sneaker switch from boots to sneakers, she did a collab with an up-and-coming sneaker artist and revealed that on TikTok, as well as Instagram. And then Blue went and did some ESPN coverage and helped out on ESPN. So they each had lots of different storylines, and my favorite was Brown. I think she's a total boss candy is what I think of her as. She rang the opening bell on Cheddar and she helped host a couple segments behind the desk on Cheddar News. So really fun. And then if you were following Orange's storyline, he had a Spotify playlist with meditation because he's prone to a little bit of anxiety. So he was able to find some mental peace in his pause as a spokescandy. So we had a lot of fun with these digital first partnerships and their storylines separately that were going on leading up to the game.
Jessica, that's just wild. I can't imagine that you ever thought you would be doing this intense work with 6 different colors of M&Ms. Are these programs that you just described, are those coming out of the marketing department or the PR department, or how do you interact with each other around these different campaigns?
Like I said, our relationship as a PR and marketing team is exceptional. And all the credit goes to my CMO, Gabrielle Wesley. She's amazing. And, certainly if you've been in the communication space over the past 20 plus years, like I have, certainly I have seen a lot of migration towards each other, right? So sometimes people even do CM, CO roles. But the CMO is oftentimes in the parlance of engagement, my best friend at work, right? So particularly when our shared assets are these incredible iconic brands. So we worked very, very closely with our branded content team and the CMO and our agency. We have a marketing agency and then we have a PR agency, and it was really an integrated agency team that handled and planned and executed this very complicated, lots of moving pieces campaign. I didn't sleep much in those 2 weeks, but it was fantastic.
And do you have a risk management strategy around this in case some of this goes awry?
Absolutely, we did. I read the risk mitigation framework. I think it was maybe 5 pages of different scenarios in about 10-point font. But it's good. It's a good exercise to think through it. And I think perhaps the learning for me is even if you have 5 pages of risk management materials, you haven't probably conceived of every single thing that could happen. So that was what I learned during the campaign, and I won't tell any more tales out of school.
Right. Well, it's so fascinating what is happening today in our world and how brands are getting involved in these social conversations, and some more successfully than others. But having this experience with M&Ms and seeing the controversy or the attention that you get from different sides of the political spectrum, what would your advice be to other communicators whose companies are beginning to explore this new territory? And how do you manage that in a way that's beneficial so that your sales are stronger and you're not being punished for your efforts?
So I think it would go back to, again, the piece I wrote for you, Fred, in the relevance report in 2018, which really was a rallying cry for companies to pick it and stick it, figure out what you stand for, and then stick to your principles and your purpose and your pathway. And everybody is not going to love you all the time in today's world. We just know that based on the demographics and the heightened sense of divide and polarization in this country today. But if you have the pathway forward, you at least can justify and explain and stand behind the actions you take as a brand and go forward from there.
And actually, M&Ms can have a purpose and a message of their own as a candy. And that's coming from the company behind it, right?
Absolutely. And I think to your point earlier when you said, who would have thought I'd be talking about these characters and their different personalities? But, one of the things I've realized as I've gotten to this point in my career is use what you have to tell the story and to do great work. And I am so proud of the work that M&M's has done to drive acts and not only ads. And what we did was we put together a global M&M's fund, which was designed to help be the execution arm of the purpose, where everybody can have access to inclusive fun. And we've given away more than $1.5 million. We've hosted purpose events with over 1 million people. We have provided mentorship to 35 different inclusion organizations. And then our biggest activation, which was sort of taking place in the background against the backdrop of the Super Bowl ad, was around our Flip the Status Quo campaign, where for the first time people could get a shot at Purple, our newest character. We introduced a new character for the first time in a decade. And the first time you could have access to Purple was with an all-female pack ahead of International Women's Day. And every dollar from the pack went to support a fund that we were putting together to support women who were flipping the status quo in their respective professions and areas of expertise. So we awarded 10 grants of $10,000 each to women who had been nominated by their admirers who were flipping the status quo. And as part of the excitement and because of the success of our Super Bowl campaign, we announced that we were funding another 10 flips. So we did 20 in total, and our advisory board with the M&M's fund helped us to select these 20 amazing winners for the Flip the Status Quo M&M's campaign. And it was an unbelievable moment. These women were so delighted. They actually got their faces on the billboard at Times Square outside of our store. We have a flagship M&M store there. And it was just really inspiring. So I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
That's a great program. Really fantastic. Jessica, what kind of audience research do you do at Mars, either in marketing or PR, to gauge whether these changes to the characters and these programs are going to be well received? Do you do surveys, or you do focus groups or anything like that?
Absolutely. And, one of the things I wanted to mention is that we saw a real spike in reputation after our purpose launch a year ago in January of 2022. We saw a real bump in reputation after we introduced Purple, our newest character in a decade, who is all focused on inclusion. and helps us with gender balance on the M&M's cast of characters. And then after the Super Bowl ads, we saw an 84% positive favorability rating with M&M's and the brand. And I think for us, the other big thing we look at is the generational appeal. Right. Many generations have loved M&M's, but we did see a slight, opportunity with the Gen Z demographic. And based on the work that we've done to modernize the characters and to refresh them, we are now in the top 10 most. M&M's is in the top 10 of most beloved brands by Gen Z, as reported by Morning Consult. And we had the fourth most loved Super Bowl ad from Gen Z as well. So, we're hitting that sweet spot and staying relevant with an iconic brand.
And do you talk to me a little bit about social media for M&M's? Are you on TikTok with M&M's and the different platforms?
Absolutely. We do a lot on Twitter, a lot on TikTok, a lot on Instagram, and we're pretty much anywhere our consumers are.
Fascinating. And are you taking these learnings from M&M's and applying them to the other brands that Mars has and trying to include purpose across the board?
Absolutely. And, something that's wonderful about Mars is it's an incredibly purpose-based company overall. We are family owned and privately held, and we have the luxury of thinking in generations. So our corporate purpose is the world that we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. And what we see is a real emphasis on those $11 billion brands I mentioned before, in making sure that they are true to their purpose and they are resonating with consumers. So, example, many people, know Mars as a snacking candy company. We're also the world's largest pet food and vet health and animal services company around the world. So, I like to say we've got candy, we've got puppies, we've got kittens. I mean, we've got it all. We've got all the happiness. We're in the happiness business overarchingly. But when I think about those products, one of the campaigns I admire enormously that we've done is our Hope Reef off of the coast of Indonesia, where we have rehabilitated a large section of the coral reef there as part of our Sheba brand, which is a cat food brand. So just, you see it all over the place, our Dove Galaxy and our work with uplifting cocoa farmers and women in the supply chain in various different cocoa producing countries. It's very inspiring, and I feel really proud to work for a company that does this type of work. Of course, here, the Skittles brand is synonymous with LGBTQ plus and pride. When you have a brand that says taste the rainbow, then you need to make sure that you're effectively, honoring the rainbow in all areas. So we're really proud of those relationships too.
That's remarkable that every brand has its own purpose associated with it. It sounds like. Well,
and some are further along on the journey. But these, we as marketing company and the CPG company, you're always trying to find out what is the differentiation and the attribute that you're offering to your consumers. And in today's world, people want to shop with, purchase, work for, invest in, and partner with brands where the values match those of their own. So you have to be real clear on what those values are.
We're just releasing new research about reputation that says just that. And it's remarkable how the products seem to drive the image of the company, that people are very focused on the products and they're very focused on what one another are saying about them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we see that. We do a lot of research where we correlate the relationship between the individual brands and the halo effect that they have on Mars Incorporated. And what we find is a very mutual relationship, that both the corporate identity and the corporate brand and the individual brands get a bump from the affiliation with each other, which I think is somewhat unique, particularly I think also a testament to how well Mars has been run as a multi-generation family business over the years.
Well, that's fascinating because it doesn't always happen that way. Can I ask you how you measure that? What do you use, like RepTrack or any outside firms, or do you do your own research?
We have a great relationship with RepTrack, and we
Uh-huh.
use them for a lot of reputation management. We also, I think I mentioned Morning Consult
Yes.
earlier, and we also do lots of work through our agencies, of course, with our marketing relationships to Omnicom, et cetera.
Given all of your experience, does that enable you to sort of predict where things are headed in this crazy world we're living in?
Oh, Fred, I wish. And one thing I have learned as I get older is the older I get, the less I actually know. And I think it is important today to make sure that you're reaching out to all generations, to your team, understanding the real dynamics of what's going on out there. And the experience is helpful for judgment and helpful in skills that you know you can land things, but the ability to predict exactly how a piece of content is going to land, I mean, those days are long gone. So buckle up and enjoy the ride and know that you can trust your experience and judgment, but be very careful if you think you know everything.
Well, Jessica, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun at Mars these days. Do you like your new job?
I love it. I really enjoy working for Mars. And, certainly as you spend decades doing this kind of work, I like to say, we walked through my history a little earlier, and I'm kind of glad I did the tough stuff early, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And, I did pesticides and GMOs for a long time. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, I'd like some more pesticides on my food, please. So, those stripes that you earn in those difficult sectors and segments really help you gain the experience and the perspective to be able now to confidently and cheerfully be able to land pretty much anything I see with these great happy brands, right? Sometimes people will come to me and say, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" I said, "Don't worry about that. I've done pesticides and GMOs, so puppies, kittens, and candies we'll figure this out. We're going to be able to land it." So it's a fun portfolio. Like I said, we're in the happiness business, and I think Mars is an absolutely wonderful company.
Well, I think it just shows, Jessica, that our work has become more complex and complicated than it ever was before, because you're having to use all of these skills that you gained working on very serious issues now for candy, and I think it's something totally new, and it makes our lives our work more challenging, but much more interesting.
I couldn't agree with you more, Fred. It is so true, and I think it is certainly a sign of the times, as we all know, but it does make the work so fascinating in so many ways. And frankly, our skill set, as you're well aware, and as people in this profession are well aware, we are incredibly relied upon partners to our CEOs and to our C-suites and to the business. I'm in conversations today, and I'm an automatic seat at the table in so many different conversations than I would have been 10 years ago, right? And that's exciting. It's a lot of responsibility, but it is such a strong testament to the value that we add as PR professionals.
Well, I always end these, Jessica, by asking people the same question, and it's usually what emoji are they relating to these days, but I'm going to ask you a different one.
Okay.
Which M&M do you relate to the most?
Oh, I love that. So I think my first inclination would be to bring up orange. That's my favorite refresh that we've done. We got in touch with so much of the mental health and wellness discussion coming out of the pandemic, and anxiety and taking care of your full self. And so Orange has presented as much more his own anxious, it's okay to not be okay self. So I would encourage everybody to be honest and open about where you are personally and emotionally in life today. I find enormous personal freedom in having my insides match my outsides, and working for a company where I can be myself. But, I have to say, I just love Brown. Like I said, I think she's a complete hashtag boss candy. I love her business savvy. I love her global view. She's a bit of a Secretary of State, Madam President type. And she's informed, she's smart, she's no nonsense, and she's a citizen of the world. So I will end with Brown and the fact that I love all the characters, but those are some personal favorites.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you for joining us on this podcast. I learned a lot about M&Ms today, but M&Ms are a symbol for what's happening across the country with all brands these days. And it's fascinating how well you've managed it. And I hope that you continue to do such a great job. Thank you for being part of this. It's really been fun.
Thank you so much, Fred, and a huge moment of appreciation for you personally and all of the work that you do at USC Annenberg and the Center for Public Relations. I'm a huge fan.
Jessica and her team at Mars Wrigley have had to navigate some of the toughest challenges in the evolving communications landscape. Like many of us, you never really know what challenges are going to come next. But if you'd like to know more about what we think about the future of PR, you can read our annual Global Communications Report called New Reputation that discusses all of these issues. You can find that on our website along with our other research reports. Thanks for tuning in to PR Future, a student-produced podcast from the Center for Public Relations at USC. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Today's episode was recorded and produced in LA by Fernando Cienfuegos and Grayson Wolf, alongside the Center for PR's director, Ron Antoinette. Join us next time as we take a deep dive into New Reputation. Once again, I'm your host, Fred Cook, and this has been PR Future.